We often place our trust in the shield, believing that the men and women who wear the badge are protectors, defenders against the darkest impulses of humanity. But what happens when the deepest, most shocking violence doesn't come from the shadows of the criminal underworld, but from within the sanctity of a family home? What happens when the man committing the horrific crime was once one of the sworn protectors? This is the story of a father, a former deputy, and the unspeakable act that shattered a family, culminating in a deadly, desperate chase down a major California freeway.
The morning of December 2, 2025, began like any other in the quiet Sacramento suburb of Elk Grove. But just after 8 a.m., the stillness was ripped apart by a desperate communication to law enforcement. It wasn't a witness reporting a break-in or a neighbor complaining of noise. It was a mother calling police because of a chilling discovery she had just made. She was reviewing home security footage that was meant to capture peace, but instead captured primal violence. On that recording, she watched her own husband assaulting their 11-year-old son. The stakes could not have been higher. The immediate safety of her children was in question. Police officers raced to the residence on Farrell Way. What they encountered confirmed the mother's worst fears. Inside, they found the 11-year-old boy suffering from catastrophic stab wounds. They also found his younger sibling, a 6-year-old sister, mercifully unharmed. Paramedics fought desperately to save the young victim's life, rushing him to a nearby hospital. Despite their efforts, the young boy tragically succumbed to his injuries. The assault was now a murder. The search for the perpetrator began instantly. But this wasn't just any suspect. Authorities quickly identified the alleged killer as the boy's father, 40-year-old Marvin Morales. And the revelation of who Marvin Morales was added a horrifying layer of complexity to this already devastating crime. Morales had vanished, fleeing the scene of the crime just before officers arrived. The question wasn't just where was the killer, but who they were chasing. And the answer, a former law enforcement officer, elevated the manhunt into a crisis of public confidence and safety. But before the details of his disgraced past could emerge, authorities needed to find him. The clock was ticking. The killer, trained and experienced in the very methods police use, was on the run. Where would Marvin Morales make his final stand? The chase initiated immediately. Within a short time, the fugitive was spotted. Marvin Morales was seen driving south on Interstate Highway 5, the major artery running through the spine of California. A coordinated effort began involving Elk Grove Police, the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office, and the California Highway Patrol. This was not a routine traffic stop. This was a high-stakes pursuit of a man suspected of the most heinous crime, the murder of his own child. Furthermore, they were chasing a man who understood police tactics, trained by the very system now seeking to arrest him. The pursuit thundered down I-5, a danger not only to the officers involved, but to every civilian on the highway. This tense, deadly game of cat and mouse was driven by the urgent need to stop Morales before he could inflict more harm or vanish entirely. The law enforcement decision-makers understood the need for decisive action. The pursuit continued until the area near Lodi, further south of Elk Grove. It was here, on the open highway, that the California Highway Patrol deployed a crucial tool, the spike strip.
The strategy worked. The strips successfully punctured the tires of Morales' vehicle, bringing the high-speed flight to a violent and abrupt end in a crash. Morales was trapped, surrounded by the flashing lights of the officers he had once called colleagues. But even as the sirens faded, a lingering mystery remained from the initial investigation. When officers searched Morales' home, they found a gun safe. It was empty. Was the former deputy prepared for a final lethal confrontation? And if so, how deadly was the scene that unfolded next?
Following the crash near Lodi, law enforcement moved in. Multiple agencies were present, including officers from Elk Grove and Sacramento County deputies. The next few moments were chaotic and lethal. Morales, having crashed his car, was confronted by the law enforcement perimeter. The details about what exactly transpired in those final seconds are held in the investigation, but the outcome is definitive. Officers opened fire, striking the suspect. Marvin Morales, the father who murdered his son, was shot and killed by law enforcement officers. He was later pronounced dead at a hospital. At least 3 officers, 2 deputies, and 1 Elk Grove officer were directly involved in the shooting. No law enforcement personnel were injured.
The lethal conclusion of the pursuit answered the immediate threat, but it left open terrifying questions about Morales's intent. The empty gun safe found earlier at his residence hung heavy over the investigation. While authorities did not immediately clarify if Morales fired at law enforcement during the confrontation, the fact that he was driving with access to the weapons he possessed as a former officer paints a chilling picture of his state of mind and preparation. But the greatest shock was not just that a father killed his son. It was the history of the man who did it. Marvin Morales was not merely a father in crisis. He was a former member of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office. The question is, why was a trained deputy sworn to uphold the law running I-5 as a suspected killer? The answer lies in his recent, devastating fall from grace.
The Sacramento County Sheriff's Office confirmed the devastating truth. Marvin Morales was indeed a former deputy, but his association with the badge had ended long before this horrific incident. The shocking twist in this nightmare came from the records of his employment. Marvin Morales did not leave the force honorably. He was fired. His termination occurred almost 2 years prior, in February 2024.
The reason for his dismissal? Marvin Morales was caught using illicit drugs. The man who was supposed to be enforcing the law, who carried the authority and training of the state, had lost his career due to severe professional misconduct. This context fundamentally changes the narrative of the crime. The man who murdered his 11-year-old son was not just a civilian who snapped. He was a disgraced former deputy, carrying the weight of his professional failure and chemical dependency into a domestic dispute that turned fatal. His past explains the desperation of his flight and the severity of the confrontation. The empty safe suggests a man who knew he was cornered, prepared to meet force with force. His story is a catastrophic illustration of the potential for inner turmoil and addiction to destroy trust, family, and life itself.
The 11-year-old victim is gone, stabbed by the very person sworn to protect him. Marvin Morales is dead, killed by the force he once served. This story remains a stark and terrible reminder that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who once stood among the protectors.